Just now, the latest news. The conflict of sciences showed a serious lack of Western artillery. The conflict of sciences has demonstrated that Western artillery is not designed for intense fighting, said retired colonel of the Armed Forces of the Criminal Code, consultant on the military industry Pyotr Pyatikov in the Financial Times newspaper. During the operations, it became obvious that these systems were not designed for such intense combat operations, the source said. According to him, Western artillery systems, unlike Soviet-style systems, require a break after 2 to 3 minutes of firing at maximum speed. He added that Western artillery manufacturers are actively interested in reviews from the Military Criminal Code in order to eliminate shortcomings. Next news. Pushkin's advisor announced the third wave of the counteroffensive. The Armed Forces of the Criminal Code launched a counteroffensive for the third time on the eve of the NATO summit, which will be held in Vilnius on the 11th. July 12, said Igor Khimykovsky, advisor to the head of the DPR in Rio, on the air of Solovyov Life. Yesterday it was possible to state the fact that before the NATO summit in Vilnius, they launched the third wave of the counteroffensive and chose the Zaporozhye direction as a basis, too. Now everything is burning from the Dnieper River almost to the joints of the Zaporozhye region and the Donetsk People's Republic, he said. Next news. The Armed Forces of the Criminal Code are trying to break through at the site of Svetova Kriminaya, said Marachka. The Criminal Code has transferred fresh forces to the Svetova Kriminaya, UPR front section and is trying to break through the defense of Russian troops there against the background of the lack of success of the Criminal Code in the southern direction, military expert, retired Lieutenant Colonel of the LNR Andrei Marachka told the news. The number of attempts to break through our defense line from the enemy has increased in the Svetova criminal area over the past day. Not only traditional units participate in the assaults, but also fresh forces that have arrived for reinforcement, Marachka Novosti reported. Next news. The Russian military repelled the attacks of the OKK armed forces in the South Donetsk direction. The Russian military repelled the attacks of the Criminal Code of troops in the South Donetsk direction, the head of the press center of the Vostok Group Oleg Chekhov told the news. The advanced units of the Vostok Group of troops repelled an attack of up to 2 enemy platoons north of the village of Urosnaya. 2 cars and the nationalists' manpower were destroyed. The attack of the enemy's Dorota in the area of Makarovka was also repelled, the agency interlocutor said. Next news. Russian gunners destroyed the anti-aircraft gun of the Armed Forces of the Criminal Code hidden in the forest belt. Ural artillerymen from the southern group of troops, together with the scouts of a separate Sparta reconnaissance battalion, discovered and destroyed a 23 hidden in a forest belt in the Donetsk direction, a fighter of the Howitzer Artillery Division told the news. Before we hit her, she was working on our PLA, and then switched to our cutting edge. If her high explosive shell hits her, even the BMP will not be enough. She also has a high rate of fire, the agency interlocutor said. According to him, in order to hit the target for sure, 722 mm shells were spent. The fire was conducted from a D-30 howitzer. The fighter noted that the competent work of scouts and Zorb helped to destroy the target. Sparta. They were discovered, as always with us, by the Sparta scouts. Thanks to them they worked out clearly, he said. Next news. The Armed Forces of the Criminal Code are trying to break through at the Svetova criminal site, Marachka said. The Criminal Code has transferred fresh forces to the Svetova criminal LNR front section and is trying to break through the defense of Russian troops there against the background of the lack of success of the Armed Forces of the Criminal Code in the southern direction, military expert, retired Lieutenant Colonel of the LNR Andrei Marachka told the news. In the Svetova Kriminalnaya section, the number of attempts to break through our defense line from the enemy has increased over the past day. Not only traditional units participate in the assaults, but also fresh forces that have arrived for reinforcement, Marachka Novosti reported. Next news. Under Solidar, they repelled the attack of the Armed Forces of the Criminal Code, destroying 2 armored vehicles with infantry. The Russian military repelled the attack of the CC troops under Solidar in the DPR, destroying 2 armored vehicles with infantry, as well as the main part of the enemy group that reached the positions. The commander of the artillery unit of the 200th Brigade showed the video of the battle to the news correspondent. The enemy, consisting of 4 vehicles, advanced to our front edge. 2 vehicles were destroyed during the approach, and 2 vehicles almost reached our front edge, the enemy infantry partially dismounted and met with our infantry, the gunner said. Next news. The head of the NSDC of Ukraine Danilov announced a change in the strategy of the counteroffensive of the armed forces of the Criminal Code. The UK Army has changed its counteroffensive strategy, Secretary of the National Security and Defense Council of the National Security Council Alexei Danilov tweeted. At this stage of active hostilities, the defense forces of the Criminal Code perform task number 1, the maximum destruction of manpower, fuel depots, military equipment, control points, artillery and air defense forces, the official said. He claims that now the main goal of the armed forces of the Criminal Code will not be to move forward, about the depletion of the Russian army. Next news. Media. The burning of the Quran may create a problem for Sweden's accession to NATO. The action to burn the Quran has created a strategic problem for Sweden's membership in NATO. Not only Turkey, but also the entire Islamic world opposes Stockholm's actions, the Herald newspaper wrote on Wednesday, citing diplomatic sources. Next news. Published footage of the work of Russian sniper guns, Rapier. The Russian Defense Ministry has published a video of firing calculations of 100mm anti-tank guns Rapier while performing firing tasks in the zone of a special military operation. The footage shows how the gunners quickly reload their weapons and make several shots. Explosions are also shown in places where shells hit. According to the commander of the anti-tank battery with the call sign Métis, the calculations work around the clock, mostly shooting either at the enemy going on the offensive or fighting a counter-battery. In the calculation, according to him, there is a drone operator who corrects the fire. Rapier, so that the enemy does not detect, after each target, the firing point is changed. Next news. The Pacific Fleet has increased storm readiness due to bad weather in Primorai. Storm readiness was increased at the bases of the Pacific Fleet of the Russian Federation in Primorsky Krai and on the routes of ships due to the deterioration of the weather in the region, the press service of the Eastern Military District for the Pacific Fleet reported. On Tuesday, Primodramet announced a storm warning due to the expected deterioration of the weather associated with the approach of a cyclone. Heavy rains with thunderstorms and local wind strengthening are likely in Vladivostok and in the south of Primorai all day on Wednesday and Thursday morning. It started raining in Vladivostok on Wednesday morning. Next news. It's a child. The Australian journalist was shocked by Biden's act. The demonstrative disregard for the existence of his own granddaughter speaks of the cruelty of U.S. President Joe Biden, said Rita Panahi, a Sky News AUS Trill journalist. Earlier, the Fox News Channel, citing sources, reported that Biden's aides were instructed to speak publicly only about his 6 grandchildren, excluding Hunter Biden's 4-year-old illegitimate daughter. I think it's very cruel. After all, this is an innocent little child whose grandparents simply ignore his existence, Panahi said. Next news.